Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mike Loves Sicily. Today we find ourselves in the mid-southern area of Sicily, about 20 kilometers north of Agrigento, in the little town of Racalmuto. So maybe you're asking, what is considered a small town in Sicily? Well, this one has a population of around 8,000 people, give or take. And its name, Racalmuto, comes from the Arabic phrase Racalmuto, meaning abandoned village. But just like every small town you come across in Sicily, there's always more than meets the eye. But let's start with my own personal connection to Racalmuto. I first heard of this place back in the summer of 2017, when I finally convinced a group of my American friends to come hang out with me in Sicily. So after checking out places like Taormina, Siragusa, Cefalù, and Trapani, we made our way down towards Agrigento to visit this little town of Racalmuto where my friend Steve's family originates from. We found an Airbnb in the next town over called Grotte, and we were hosted by this young, hip, cool guy named Paolo, and we just hit it off with him right away. He gave us delicious homemade wine served out of a plastic bottle, and showed us the beautiful countryside surrounding the villa. He even took a day, brought us to Racalmuto, and tried to help us track down some of Steve's family, which sadly we weren't very successful with. Either way, it was a very memorable and inspiring stay, which I'll explain more about why later. For now, let's fast forward a bunch of years where we've made our way back to Racalmuto and back with Paolo. This time we're here to learn about the thing that Racalmuto is most famous for. Racalmuto is the birthplace and hometown of author Leonardo Sciascia, who's one of Sicily's most important authors. Our first stop in town was to meet Paolo at a cute little spot called Pizzeria Smile, where we were able to try one of Sciascia's favorite local foods. We ate impignuolata, a savory, doughy calzone-type pastry when made the Racalmutese way, is stuffed with goodies like sausage, onion, and olives. We learned that this was a favorite of Sciascia, and that he loved humble local food.
Ovviamente quando aveva ospiti a casa, alla sua tavola, spesso offriva anche le impignolate, no? Che è questo, possiamo dire, battaglia di sapori, perché c'è dentro cipolla, salsiccia, olive, ed è, diciamo, un pezzo unico della enogastronomia, diciamo, racalmutese.
But how did we know so much about the personal taste of Leonardo Sciascia? Well, Paolo had organized this lunch with Sciascia expert and local Racalmutese Salvatore Piccone, who has basically dedicated his life to studying and writing about Sciascia.
A Sciascia e le scuole della provincia di Agrigento sarà presentata l'impressione che la mia nascita sia posteriore alla mia residenza qui, risiedevo qui e poi vi sono nato.
È una straordinaria poesia, dice, dedicata a Racalmuto. Mi è riposo il ricordo dei tuoi giorni grigi, delle tue vecchie case che strozzano strade.
So after we wrapped up lunch, Salvatore brought us to the home where Sciascia was raised, and where he later returned and wrote, and where he got lots of inspiration at his aunt's house.
Diceva e scriveva che è diventato scrittore proprio ascoltando queste zie che non uscivano mai di casa e che sapevano tutto del paese. Sciascia ha preso tutto da Racalmuto. Non c'è libro dove non ci sia un aspetto che riguarda questo paese. La cosa particolare è che ha fatto di questo paese la metafora del mondo, cioè lui, per scrivere dei mali dell'Italia, ha avuto sempre come osservatorio la sua Racalmuto. Quando è morto, i giornali scrissero che Sciascia era la coscienza della Sicilia, scrivendo per primo di mafia e andando sempre alla ricerca delle verità, ha messo fuori il vero carattere dei siciliani. Parlando della palma che va a nord, lui voleva dire insomma che tutta l'Italia stava diventando Sicilia e quindi la mafia non era soltanto ascrivibile a questo popolo, alla terra di Sicilia, ma a tutto il territorio nazionale.
Suffice to say, Leonardo Sciascia had lots of pride for his hometown and for Sicily, but he always told stories with honesty and said things the way they actually were, and how in many ways they still are. But we won't get into all of that. And look, you can learn way more about Sciascia. For one, you can read Salvatore's book. Or if you're ever in Racalmuto, you can visit the Leonardo Sciascia Foundation, a museum with loads of information and resources. But the best thing you can do if you're really interested is to read some of his work. You can find English translations of many of his novels and short stories, and his most famous book, Il giorno della civetta, The Day of the Owl, the one that I read, was actually made into a movie. It revolves around a murder investigation in a small town in Sicily that pulls back the curtain on all the different levels of corruption that existed because of the power of the mafia, not just in Sicily, but all over Italy. Now, we don't like to talk too much about the mafia on Mike Loves Sicily, but for Leonardo Sciascia, we'll make an exception. Salvatore showed us a few more things around town, including their theater, which was built 150 years ago and features a 100-meter curtain with a painting showing the revolt of the Sicilian Vespers against a French king in the year 1282. Later on, a dinner was organized by Salvatore and Paolo, and some of the local politicians and important citizens of Racalmuto were invited. And although the theme is always Sciascia with this crew, I was interested to know what else there was to learn about this place. So I asked some locals that Paolo brought along.
What are your feelings about Racalmuto? What do you like about it? Tell me.
We call Festa del Monte, della Madonna del Monte. It's in July. The people we call borghesi fight together to get a flag of the Madonna of del Monte. You can watch a video on YouTube.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm curious. So I went on YouTube. And we all know I get a kick out of Sicilians doing over-the-top religious festivities, and of course this place has its own special thing. The Festa della Madonna del Monte starts with, you guessed it, a miracle from the year 1503. The story goes like this. A Sicilian prince from Castelnuovo was on a hunting trip in North Africa when a storm forced his party to seek refuge in a cave. In this cave, they came upon a statue of the Virgin Mary. Miracle number 1. So the prince loaded the statue onto his ship that was headed back to Sicily. They landed in Agrigento, but needed to travel north to Castelnuovo near Palermo, and on the way, the statue, which was being transferred on a cart, got slowed down by some mud in where else than Racalmuto. Naturally, everyone in town came to see the statue, including the Count of Racalmuto. The locals thought the statue should stay put, but the prince obviously didn't agree with that, and what started as a small disagreement quickly led to sword fighting. But suddenly everyone noticed that the cart had sank a little into the mud, bringing the statue to rest right there in Racalmuto. This was miracle number 2, and everyone agreed that it was the Madonna herself who made the decision to stay put in Racalmuto. So the statue stayed, they quickly built a church in its honor, and we have the beginning of the tradition. These days, the Festa della Madonna del Monte has taken on a life of its own. In the second weekend of July, the whole town gets together for processions, reenactments, fireworks. They have this tradition of dressing up horses and getting locals to climb the steps of the church while riding these horses to give their offerings to the Madonna. This tradition, La Permissione, started long ago when farmers, who had nothing to give, performed this risky maneuver up the stairs to show they would sacrifice their lives for Mother Mary. Wow, look at them go. Let's hope those horses are okay. And hey, look who's reporting on the scene. Now Salvatore here is talking about the tradition known as the Cilio, the one mentioned to me at dinner. The one with the big candle and the flags and the bachelors. On Saturday night, they parade large candle structures called blanuna, representing the specific tradespeople of the town, like the chickpea farmers and the olive oil producers. And the biggest one, that dates back to 1888, is covered in embroidered banners. And this one gets towed by a tractor down the middle of the main street, Corso Garibaldi, when it suddenly stops. And at this point, the chaos ensues. The tradition here is that the unmarried men of the town race and climb and fight on the structure to try and grab the banner at the top. And as you can see, this is not something done in the most polite or safe way. The one who gets up there first and secures the banner is declared the winner and becomes the town's most eligible bachelor. He also gets the responsibility of creating the top banner for next year's festival. So yeah, that small mention of people fighting in the street led me down this crazy rabbit hole of Madonna del Monte. And after more research, I found that there were other places that celebrate this tradition. Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, the official sister city of Racalmuto, where they have a big population of folks from there. And let me tell you, they go all out for their own Festa del Monte there and have a parade with the candles and the horses and the Madonna. And they've even recently commissioned the same Sicilian sculptor who made the Sciascia statue back in Racalmuto to make their very own statue for Hamilton, which was finished, delivered all the way from Sicily, and recently installed outside their city hall. Now, the only other place I could find where they have a fest that correlates to Madonna del Monte was, can you believe it? Buffalo, New York, my hometown. In Buffalo, we just know it as the Italian Festival, and it mainly revolves around food. But now we know the reason that it takes place the second week of July, why they still have some religious donations set up, and there's even a Sicilian puppet show. What a strange coincidence. And hey, there's my friend Dan. So even though I'm realizing that I barely scratched the surface of what goes on with the Madonna del Monte, at the time of this dinner, I was mostly just fascinated to see that I had both Paolos sitting next to each other again. You see, Paolo here was the main inspiration for the character Paolo in my film Sound of the Island, who is played by Francesco. But the story goes deeper than that. The following year, after meeting Paolo here for the first time, my friend Matt and I went back to Sicily in 2018 to find his family, again with the help of Paolo, and many of the moments from this trip ended up in the film that we were writing at the time. Like going to the town's historical records office to try and find some info on Matt's family.
The Prof Gambino will come here in some years.
Come here.
Yes.
They eventually decided our best bet was to try talking with a local professor who had his own town records. And he did finally help us track down Matt's distant relatives, whom we were able to meet and chat with. Besides finding Matt's family and finishing this Paolo-influenced script we'd been writing, we were also looking for an actor to portray Paolo. And on this same trip, we actually did casting back in Trapani, where we found Francesco. Now we move forward another year to 2019, when Paolo helped us during production of the movie as a location scout for the film for the scenes shot in the Racalmuto area. All the while, Francesco was acting as a version of him. I can't overstate how much of a role Paolo played during all of this. And I truly can't thank him enough for putting up with this crew.
To see my old pal Paolo again, and it's just really nice. I feel really good. Thanks so much.
And now here we are, years later, making Mike Loves Sicily, still trying to promote that film. And it's just a big, beautiful, circular energy where you can reflect on everything. You just never know what life will bring, what you'll learn, who you'll meet, how anyone, even the most unsuspecting person, can alter the course of your life. So I recommend that you get to know people, don't take new opportunities for granted, And always keep the door open for new adventures. The world is filled with them. And that's all from Racalmuto.
All i strati di Racalmuto hanno cicatrici da ieri. And wherever you should roam, please find your way back home to the streets of Racalmuto.